Kethral had studied war for 600 years. He had watched empires rise and fall. He had documented the burning of worlds and the extinction of species. In all that time, he thought he had seen everything the galaxy could offer. He was wrong. The historian stood in the observation deck of Nexus Prime, a massive space station that floated at the crossroads of a dozen trade routes. Ships of every shape and size docked at its ports. Aliens of every species walked its corridors. It was neutral ground, a place where enemies could meet without weapons and speak without fear. Today, it would host a meeting that would change everything Kethral thought he knew about the universe. The humans had arrived 3 hours ago. Their ship, a vessel called the Horizon's Edge, sat in Docking Bay 7. It was not the largest ship at the station. It was not the most beautiful, but something about it made Kethral uneasy. The design was practical, almost ugly. There were no decorations, no symbols of status, just armor plating and weapon ports. It was a ship built for one purpose, and that purpose was not diplomacy. Kethral made his way to the diplomatic chamber. His species, the Velnari, were known throughout the galaxy as watchers and recorders. They did not fight. They did not take sides. They simply observed and wrote down what they saw. It was their sacred duty, passed down through countless generations. Other species tolerated their presence because Velnari histories were always accurate, always fair. Even the cruelest warlord wanted to be remembered correctly. The chamber was already filling when Kethral arrived. He counted representatives from 8 different species, all of them keeping their distance from each other. The tension in the room was thick enough to taste. Everyone knew why they were here. Everyone knew what was at stake. The Dravani Empire had issued an ultimatum to humanity. Surrender 3 frontier colonies or face destruction. It was not an unusual demand. The Dravani had made similar demands to dozens of species over the centuries. Most surrendered immediately. The ones who fought were crushed without mercy. The Dravani were the greatest warriors in known space. Their soldiers were 3 times the size of humans, covered in natural armor, and bred for combat since birth. No species had ever defeated them in open war. Kethral found a spot near the back of the chamber where he could see everything. He activated his recording device and waited. The Dravani delegation entered first. Warmaster Galtok led them, a massive figure in ceremonial armor that gleamed under the lights. His face was a mask of sharp angles and deep scars. Each scar represented a battle won, an enemy killed. Galtok had many scars. Behind him came 12 guards, each one armed with weapons that could cut through steel like paper. The other species in the room stepped back as the Dravani passed. Fear was written on every face. Kethral understood their fear. He had seen what the Dravani did to those who opposed them. He had documented the aftermath of their conquests. Mass graves, burned cities, entire populations reduced to slavery. Then the humans arrived. There were only 6 of them. Captain Samuel Torres led the group. He was not a large man. He was shorter than Galtok by more than a foot. His hair was dark, touched with gray at the temples. His face was calm, almost bored. He walked into the room as if he owned it. Behind him came his officers. Lieutenant Commander Amy Lawson walked at his right side. She was younger than her captain, with sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything at once. Sergeant Nathan Cole followed with 3 other soldiers. They wore light armor and carried small weapons at their hips. Compared to the Dravani guards, they looked almost harmless. Kethral studied the humans with interest. He had read about them, of course. Every historian knew the stories. Humans came from a world called Earth, a planet so dangerous that most species classified it as a death world. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was filled with poison. The native life forms were designed to kill, yet somehow, humans had not only survived on this nightmare world, they had thrived. They had spread across the stars. The stories said humans were dangerous. Looking at them now, Kethral found that hard to believe. They seemed so small, so fragile. Warmaster Galtok clearly agreed. He looked at Captain Torres with open contempt. When he spoke, His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "You are the leader of these creatures?" Galtok asked. Torres nodded. "I am. And you must be War Master Galtok. I've heard stories about you. Then you know what I am capable of." "I know what you think you're capable of," Torres replied. His voice was quiet, steady. He might have been discussing the weather. "There's a difference." A ripple of shock passed through the chamber. No one spoke to a Dravani War Master that way. Kethral leaned forward, suddenly very interested. Galtok's eyes narrowed. "You will surrender your colonies. You will pay tribute to the Empire. You will kneel before Dravani might, as all species must. This is not a negotiation. This is a fact." Torres tilted his head slightly. "And if we refuse? Then we will burn your worlds. We will kill your soldiers. We will enslave your children. This is also a fact." The chamber fell silent. Every eye was on Torres. Kethral watched the human's face, looking for fear. He saw none. Instead, he saw something that confused him. The human captain was smiling. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. "I appreciate the offer," Torres said, "but I'm going to have to decline." Galtok stared at him for a long moment. Then he made a gesture with one hand. His guards began moving forward, spreading out to surround the human delegation. "Then, you leave me no choice. You will come with us as prisoners. Your government will pay for your release with the colonies we demanded, plus additional concessions. Resist, and you will die here." The other species in the room scattered, pressing themselves against the walls. Kethral stayed where he was, his recording device capturing everything. His heart was pounding. He was about to witness humans die. Torres looked at the approaching guards. He looked at Galtok. Then he turned to Sergeant Cole and nodded once. Cole smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of something hungry waking up. "Finally," Cole said, and then the humans moved. Kethral had witnessed many battles in his long life. He had seen armies clash on burning plains. He had watched fleets tear each other apart in the cold darkness of space. But he had never seen anything like what happened in that diplomatic chamber. The Dravani guards were fast. They were trained from childhood to kill. Their weapons could cut through armor like it was cloth. 12 of them moved towards 6 humans, confident in their victory. 8 seconds later, it was over. Kethral's recording device captured everything. But his mind struggled to understand what his eyes were seeing. The humans did not fight like any species he had ever studied. They did not stand their ground and trade blows. They did not try to overpower their larger opponents with strength. Instead, they flowed around the Dravani like water around stones. Sergeant Cole was the first to move. He stepped inside the reach of the nearest guard before the Dravani could swing his weapon. His hands found soft spots in the alien's armor. Places where joints met. There was a crack, then a scream, then the guard was falling. Cole was already moving to the next target. The other humans spread out in perfect coordination. They never got in each other's way. They never struck at the same target. It was like watching a single creature with 12 arms, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. One of the Dravani guards managed to fire his weapon. The energy beam cut through empty air. The human he had aimed at was no longer there. She had dropped to the floor and rolled. Coming up behind him, her elbow found the back of his knee. Her fist found his throat. He went down choking. Lieutenant Commander Amy Lawson walked calmly through the chaos. She did not run. She did not shout. When War Master Galtok reached for her, she took his arm and twisted. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the silent chamber. Galtok, the most feared warrior in the Dravani Empire, fell to his knees with a cry of pain. Lawson held him there, one hand on his broken arm, the other pressing against a nerve cluster in his neck. Her face showed no emotion at all. Captain Torres had not moved from his spot. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the fight with mild interest. When it was over, he picked up his drink from the table beside him and took a small sip. "I believe that concludes today's negotiations," he said. Kethral realized he had stopped breathing. He forced air into his lungs and looked around the chamber. The other species were pressed against the walls, their faces showing pure terror. They looked at the humans the way prey animals look at predators. The Dravani guards lay on the floor. Some were unconscious. Some were groaning in pain. A few were trying to crawl away. None of them were dead. Kethral noted this with surprise. The humans could have killed every one of them. They had chosen not to. Torres gestured to his team. They released their prisoners and stepped back, forming a loose circle around their captain. Cole cracked his knuckles and rolled his shoulders, looking almost disappointed that the fight had ended so quickly. Galtok struggled to his feet, cradling his broken arm. His face was a mask of fury and disbelief. "This is not possible," he hissed. "You are weak. Your species is young. How can you—" "We're full of surprises," Torres interrupted. "Now, I suggest you take your guards and leave. We'll consider today's events a misunderstanding. A moment of poor judgment on your part. Go home, think carefully about what you've seen, and pray that we never have to meet like this again." The War Master stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and limped out of the chamber, his surviving guards following close behind. Kethral waited until the Dravani were gone. Then he approached the humans, his legs shaking slightly. Torres noticed him and raised an eyebrow. "Can I help you?" the captain asked. "I am Kethral," the historian said. "I am a keeper of records for the Velnari. I have studied war for 600 years. I have witnessed the armies of 100 species. I have never seen anything like what you just did." Torres smiled slightly. "We get that a lot. I would like to observe your species further, to understand how such a thing is possible. The Dravani are the finest warriors in known space. Your soldiers defeated them in seconds." "The Dravani are bullies," Cole said. He was still smiling that unsettling smile. "They've never fought anyone who could hit back. That makes them sloppy." Torres considered Kethral's request for a moment. Then he nodded. "You can observe. But understand, what you saw today was restraint. We didn't want to kill anyone. We were holding back. Pray you never see us without our restraint." Kethral did not know how to respond to that. He simply nodded and fell in step behind the humans as they left the chamber. Over the next few hours, the historian learned more about humanity than any of his predecessors had ever discovered. Torres invited him aboard the Horizon's Edge and showed him the ship. He met the crew. He read their history files, and slowly, he began to understand. Humans had evolved on a world that wanted to kill them. Every other intelligent species in the galaxy had risen to dominance on their homeworlds because they were the strongest, the fastest, or the most venomous. Humans had none of these advantages. They were soft. They were slow. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor, but they had something else. They had endurance. They could chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could take damage that would kill other species and keep going. They healed from wounds that should have been fatal. And most importantly, they never gave up, ever. Kethral was reading about human history when an alarm rang through the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors. He heard boots running on metal floors. Something had happened. He found Torres on the bridge, surrounded by his officers. They were staring at a view screen that showed a planet burning. Cities were in flames. Ships were falling from the sky like wounded birds. "New Haven," Torres said. His voice was different now. The casual friendliness was gone. In its place was something cold and hard. 3 million civilians. The Dravani attacked an hour ago. No warning. No demands. They just started killing. Lawson put a hand on his shoulder. "Sam." Torres did not look at her. His eyes were fixed on the screen, on the fire, and the death. "They murdered 3 million people because I embarrassed their war master. Because I wouldn't kneel. This isn't your fault. No, it's theirs." Torres finally turned away from the screen. He looked at his crew. He looked at Kethral. The historian felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in the captain's eyes that he had never seen before. Something ancient and terrible. All hands, Torres said. Prepare for battle. We're going to war. Kethral watched the humans move. There was no panic. No hesitation. They had been waiting for this moment their entire lives. They were born for it. Lawson stood beside Torres and spoke quietly. The Dravani have never lost a war. Their homeworld has never been attacked. They have 400 ships defending it. Torres nodded. Then, we'll need every ship we can get. Send word to Fleet Command. Tell Admiral Hayes it's time. Tell her to bring everyone. Everyone? Everyone. Kethral realized he was about to witness something that had never happened before. Humanity was going to war. And for the first time in his long life, the historian felt afraid, not for the humans, for everyone else. The fleet gathered at the edge of human space. Kethral stood at the observation window of the horizon's edge and watched them arrive. One by one, the ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took their positions. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, each one bearing the flag of Earth. He counted 60 vessels. 60 ships against an empire that had conquered half the galaxy. It should have been a joke. It should have been suicide. But the humans did not seem worried. They seemed eager. Captain Torres had given Kethral full access to the ship. The historian used it well. He walked through every corridor. He spoke to every crew member. He tried to understand what made these strange creatures tick. His first stop was the medical bay. Dr. Laura Kim was there, checking equipment and preparing for casualties. She was a small woman with gentle hands and kind eyes. Kethral found it hard to believe she belonged to the same species as Sergeant Cole. "You're the historian," she said when he entered. "The captain told me about you. You want to know what makes us special?" Kethral nodded. "I have studied many species. None of them fight the way your people do. None of them survive the things your people survive. I do not understand how it is possible." Kim smiled and pulled up a display showing human anatomy. "We evolved on a planet that wanted us dead. Our bodies adapted. We can survive injuries that would kill any other species in the galaxy. We can lose limbs and keep fighting. We can take poison and survive. We can go days without food or water and still function." "That is remarkable," Kethral admitted. "But the Dravani are stronger than you. Faster. Better armored. Strength isn't everything," Kim said. "Have you ever heard of persistence hunting?" Kethral had not. Kim explained it to him. Long ago, before humans had weapons or technology, they hunted by following their prey for hours or even days. They could not outrun the animals they hunted. They could not overpower them. But they could outlast them. They would follow, always following, never stopping, until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. Then they would move in for the kill. "That's what we are," Kim said. "We're the species that doesn't stop. Ever. The Dravani might be stronger than us. They might win the first fight. But we'll come back. We'll come back again and again until they break. Because we don't know how to give up. It's not in our nature." Kethral left the medical bay with much to think about. He made his way to the engineering section, where Chief Engineer Derek Santos was working on the ship's power systems. Santos was a large man with thick arms and grease on his face. He looked up when Kethral entered. "You're the alien who's been asking questions," Santos said. "Come to see the engines? If you would permit it." Santos laughed. "Sure. Just don't touch anything." He showed Kethral the reactor that powered the ship. The historian's eyes went wide. According to his knowledge, this type of reactor was considered unstable by most species. The radiation levels alone should have been fatal. "How do you survive?" Kethral asked. "Humans are tough," Santos said. "Radiation that would kill your species just gives us a headache. We build our ships to take advantage of that. More power, more speed, more firepower. The other species look at our designs and think we're crazy. But we're not crazy. We're just willing to risk more than they are. And if something goes wrong," Santos shrugged, "then we fix it. Or we die trying. Either way, the ship keeps flying." Kethrall moved on to the weapons bay, where Lieutenant Kevin Park was running diagnostics on the ship's guns. Park was young, barely more than a child by Velnari standards, but his hands moved over the controls with the confidence of a master. "I hear the Dravani have 400 ships waiting for us," Park said. "Good. More targets. You are not afraid?" "I'm terrified," Park admitted. "But that doesn't change anything. Fear is just a feeling. It doesn't control me. I control it." Kethrall did not understand. In his experience, fear was the most powerful force in the universe. It had shaped the behavior of every species he had ever studied. Only humans seemed immune to it. That evening, Captain Torres called a meeting. The entire crew gathered in the main hall to watch a holographic broadcast from Fleet Admiral Christine Hayes. She was an older woman, with white hair and hard eyes. She had been fighting wars since before most of her officers were born. "I'll keep this brief," Admiral Hayes said. "The Dravani murdered 3 million of our people. They thought it would break us. They were wrong. They have never been more wrong about anything in their history. In 12 hours, we will attack their homeworld. We will break through their defenses. We will land troops on their surface. And we will make them understand that humanity is not prey. We are the predators. We always have been." The crew listened in silence. When the Admiral finished speaking, they began to prepare for battle. Kethrall watched them work, fascinated by their rituals. Some of them played music. Strange, loud music that made Kethrall's ears hurt. They said it helped them focus. Others wrote letters to loved ones. They sealed the letters and gave them to friends with instructions to deliver them, just in case. Kethrall realized these were farewell messages. The humans knew they might die tomorrow. They accepted it. Sergeant Cole cleaned his weapons. His hands moved automatically, performing tasks they had performed 1,000 times before. When he noticed Kethrall watching, he gestured for the historian to sit beside him. "You're wondering why we do this," Cole said. "Why we fight when we know we might lose. Yes. The odds are not in your favor. A logical species would surrender, or run." Cole shook his head. "Humans aren't logical. We're stubborn. And we believe in things." "What things?" "That some things are worth dying for. That running away isn't really living. That when someone hurts the people you love, you make them pay for it." Cole finished cleaning his rifle and looked at Kethrall. "The Dravani killed 3 million people, children, families. They thought we would be too afraid to fight back. They don't understand us at all. What will you do to them?" Cole smiled his unsettling smile. "Whatever we have to." The next morning, the fleet moved out. 60 ships in perfect formation, heading toward the heart of enemy territory. Kethrall stood on the bridge with Captain Torres and his officers. The view screen showed the stars stretching past as they traveled faster than light. Then the ship dropped out of faster than light travel, and the stars became still. Ahead of them, filling half the view screen, was the Dravani homeworld, and between them and the planet were 400 enemy ships. Kethrall felt his heart stop. The enemy fleet was enormous. It stretched across space like a wall of metal and fire. Any sane species would have turned and run. The humans did not even slow down. "All ships," Torres said. "Attack formation. No quarter given. No mercy shown." He paused. "Today, we remind the galaxy why they used to be afraid of the dark, because humans were in it." The fleet surged forward. Kethrall gripped the railing and watched as 60 ships charged toward 400. The Battle of Drevkar Prime had begun. The first Dravani ship exploded 3 seconds after the battle began. Kethrall watched it happen on the view screen. A blossom of fire blooming in the darkness of space. Human weapons were not supposed to be this accurate. Human ships were not supposed to be this fast. But the humans did not seem to care what they were supposed to do. The horizon's edge shook as enemy fire struck its shields. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. Officers shouted coordinates and damage reports. In the center of it all, Captain Torres stood like a statue, his eyes fixed on the battle unfolding before him. "Status report," he said calmly. Lieutenant Commander Amy Lawson checked her console. Shields at 80%. 3 enemy ships, destroyed. 2 of ours are damaged but still fighting. Tell them to stay in formation. We need to punch through the center of their line. Kethral could not believe what he was seeing. The humans were outnumbered almost 7-1. They should have been destroyed in the first minute of fighting. Instead, they were winning. Their ships moved through the enemy fleet like wolves through a herd of prey, striking fast and moving on before the Dravani could respond. The Dravani fought back with everything they had. Their weapons were powerful enough to crack planets. Their ships were massive, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. But they were slow. They were predictable. And they had never faced an enemy that refused to die. A Dravani beam weapon struck the horizon's edge directly. The ship shuddered. Metal screamed. On the damage display, an entire section of the hull turned red. "Engineering is hit," someone shouted. "We're losing power." Torres did not flinch. "Derek, talk to me." Chief Engineer Derek Santos's voice came over the communication system, rough with pain. "The reactor took damage. I can keep her running, but I need to stay down here. How bad are you hurt?" "Bad enough. Don't worry about me, Captain. Just keep fighting. I'll keep the lights on." Kethral learned later that Santos had been burned over half his body when the engineering section was hit. Any other species would have been dead or unconscious. Santos kept working. He sealed the breaches. He rerouted the power. He held the ship together through sheer force of will. The battle raged on. Human pilots flew their fighters through storms of enemy fire, performing maneuvers that should have been impossible. The forces they endured would have killed any other species. Their bodies could barely handle it. But they did it anyway, pushing themselves beyond every limit, because that was what had to be done. Kethral watched the helmet camera feeds from the boarding teams. Sergeant Cole led his soldiers onto a Dravani command ship, cutting through the hull with plasma torches and fighting their way inside. The corridors were dark and filled with enemies. The Dravani were bigger, stronger, better armed. It did not matter. Cole moved through the enemy like a force of nature. He took hits that should have killed him and kept fighting. His soldiers followed his example. One of them, a young woman named Lisa, took a blade through her shoulder. She pulled it out, threw it back at the Dravani who had stabbed her, and shot him twice before he hit the ground. "Humans are insane," Kethral whispered. On the bridge, Lieutenant Kevin Park was directing the ship's weapons with terrifying precision. Every shot found its target. Every burst of fire meant another enemy ship crippled or destroyed. His face was pale and sweating, but his hands were steady. "I need more power to the forward batteries," he said. "You'll get it," Torres replied. "Derek? Already on it," Santos's voice crackled. "Diverting power now. Give them hell, Park." The horizon's edge fired a barrage that tore through 2 Dravani cruisers. The enemy ships broke apart, their crews dying in the cold vacuum of space. Park did not celebrate. He was already selecting his next targets. In the medical bay, Dr. Laura Kim worked without rest. Wounded soldiers filled every bed. More arrived every minute. Some were missing limbs. Some had burns covering their bodies. Some had injuries so severe that they should have been fatal. Kim saved them all. Or tried to. She moved from patient to patient, stitching wounds and setting bones and pushing medications into failing systems. When one soldier coded on her table, she brought him back with her bare hands, pressing on his chest until his heart started beating again. "You're not dying on me today," she told him. "That's an order." The tide of the battle began to turn. The Dravani had expected an easy victory. They had expected the humans to break and run, like every other species they had ever faced. When that did not happen, they did not know what to do. Their commanders issued contradictory orders. Their formations fell apart. Fear began to spread through their ranks. The humans did not let up. They pressed their advantage, pushing deeper into the enemy fleet. Ship after ship fell before them. The Dravani had never lost like this. They had never even imagined it was possible. Then, War Master Galtok made his decision. He ordered a full retreat to the planet's surface, where orbital defense platforms would protect his remaining forces. The Dravani ships began to fall back, forming a defensive ring around their homeworld. Torres saw the opportunity. "All ships, follow them. Don't let them regroup." "Sir," Lawson said carefully, "the defense platforms are heavily armed. If we get too close—" "I know." Torres studied the tactical display. The defense platforms formed a wall of weapons around the planet. Getting through them would cost lives. Many lives. But behind those platforms was the Dravani homeworld, the seat of their power, the heart of their empire. Torres made his choice. "We're going through," he said. "All ships, maintain attack speed. We stop when they stop. We die when they die. Not before." The fleet surged forward. The defense platforms opened fire. Space became a storm of light and death. The horizon's edge took hit after hit. Sections of the ship went dark. Fires broke out in the lower decks. The hull groaned like a wounded animal. But the ship kept flying. The crew kept fighting. Torres watched as 2 human ships exploded under the weight of enemy fire. Then 3 more. The cost was terrible. But the fleet was making progress. They were breaking through. "I need more speed," Torres said. "The engines are at maximum," Santos reported. "Then find something. We're almost through." There was a long pause. Then Santos laughed, a broken sound that dissolved into coughing. "All right, Captain. I'll give you everything I've got. Just promise me one thing. Name it. Make them pay." "I will." The horizon's edge surged forward, faster than it had any right to go. Torres aimed the ship directly at the largest defense platform in their path. The platform's weapons tore into the hull. Systems failed. Lights went out. The bridge shook so hard that Kethril was thrown from his feet, but the ship did not stop. It hit the platform at full speed, tearing through metal and machinery, creating a gap in the enemy's defenses. Through that gap, the surviving human ships poured toward the planet below. Kethril pulled himself up and looked at Torres. The captain was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. His uniform was torn, but he was still standing, still giving orders. "All ships," Torres said, his voice steady despite everything. "Begin the landing. We're taking the fight to the surface." He turned to look at Kethril. His eyes were hard as stone. "You wanted to see humans at war, historian. Now you have. I hope you're taking good notes." Kethril was. He was writing down everything. And he knew that what he was witnessing would change the galaxy forever. The dropships fell from the sky like rain. Kethril was inside one of them, strapped into a seat between 2 human soldiers. The ship shook as it entered the atmosphere of the Dravani homeworld. Through the small window, he could see fire streaming past the hull. Around him, the humans were calm. Some checked their weapons. Others closed their eyes and breathed slowly. Sergeant Cole sat across from Kethril, his rifle across his lap, his eyes distant. He looked like a man preparing for work he had done many times before. The dropship landed hard. The doors opened. Kethril followed the soldiers out into a world at war. The Dravani capital stretched before them, a city of towering spires and ancient stone. Smoke rose from a dozen places where human weapons had already struck. In the distance, Kethril could hear the sounds of battle, explosions and screaming, and the crack of weapons fire. He expected the humans to burn everything. After what the Dravani had done to New Haven, no one would have blamed them. 3 million dead, children among them. It would have been justice. It would have been revenge. But the humans did not burn the city. They moved through it with purpose, heading toward military targets and command centers. When they passed civilian buildings, they left them standing. When they encountered Dravani, who were not soldiers, they let them go. Kethril walked beside Cole as the squad advanced through the streets. "I do not understand," he said. "Your people have every reason to destroy this place. Why show mercy?" Cole did not slow down. His eyes scanned the buildings around them, watching for threats. "Because we're not them. They killed your people. Innocent people. Yes. And it made us angry. It made us want revenge. But we don't let anger control us. We control it. Cole paused at a corner, checking for enemies before waving his squad forward. The Dravani think strength means being cruel. They're wrong. Strength means being able to be cruel and choosing not to. They fought their way through the city for hours. The Dravani defenders were fierce, but they were fighting for survival now, not conquest. Their formations broke. Their morale crumbled. Every time they thought they had stopped the human advance, the humans found another way through. In the medical stations that followed the troops, human doctors treated wounded Dravani alongside wounded humans. Kethral watched a human medic save the life of a Dravani soldier who had been trying to kill him 10 minutes earlier. Why? The Dravani asked, confused and afraid. Because you needed help, the medic said simply. That's reason enough. As night fell, the humans reached the central command bunker. It was buried beneath a mountain of stone and steel, protected by the last of the Dravani elite guards. Captain Torres had arrived with reinforcements, his face still bloody, his body still battered from the battle in space. Cole's squad led the assault. They fought through the bunker's defenses, room by room, corridor by corridor. The Dravani guards fought with desperation, but they could not stop the human advance. Nothing could. Finally, they reached the command center. Inside, surrounded by the wreckage of his empire, sat War Master Galtok. He looked different than he had in the diplomatic chamber. Smaller somehow. The arrogance was gone from his face, replaced by something Kethral had never expected to see on a Dravani: fear. Torres walked into the room alone. His weapons were holstered. His hands were empty. He stood before Galtok and waited. You could have burned this world, Galtok said. His voice was hollow. You could have killed everyone, taken revenge for New Haven. Yes, Torres agreed. We could have. Why didn't you? Torres was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired but steady. Because that's not who we are. We don't fight because we enjoy it. We fight because we have to. And when the fighting's done, we stop. We rebuild. We move forward. Galtok shook his head. I don't understand. Your people are dead because of me. Because of my orders. And you show mercy? Mercy isn't weakness, Torres said. It's the hardest kind of strength there is. It would be easy to kill you. It would be easy to burn your cities and salt your fields. But easy isn't the same as right. We came here to end a war, not to commit genocide. He stepped closer to the fallen War Master. Your empire is over. Your fleet is destroyed. Your armies are broken. But your people will survive. We'll help you rebuild. Under new terms, peace, justice, no more conquests, no more slaves. You'll have to learn to live like everyone else. And if we refuse? Torres's eyes hardened. Then we'll come back. And next time, we won't be so gentle. But I don't think that will happen. I think you've learned your lesson. I think you finally understand what humans are. Galtok looked at him for a long time. Then, slowly, he bowed his head. I surrender, he said. The Dravani Empire surrenders. The war was over. Months later, Kethral sat in his chamber aboard a Velnari research vessel, working on his historical account of the war. He had interviewed hundreds of people, human and Dravani alike. He had gathered data and testimony and footage. Now he had to make sense of it all. He called his work, Why the Heavens Dread Their Might. It took him 3 years to complete. In his conclusion, he wrote about what he had learned. He wrote about human endurance and human ferocity. He wrote about their weapons and their tactics. But those were not the things that made humans dangerous. Those were not the things that made the galaxy afraid. The universe contains many dangerous species, Kethral wrote. Predators who kill without thought, conquerors who destroy without remorse. But humans are something different. They are the species that could burn worlds to ash, yet chooses to plant gardens instead. They are terrifying not because of what they will do, but because of what they could do and don't. He wrote about watching human soldiers play games with Dravani children in the ruins of the capital. He wrote about human doctors healing the same enemies they had fought hours before. He wrote about mercy offered to those who deserved none. When humanity goes to war, the galaxy trembles, Kethral concluded. Not because humans are monsters, but because they remind us what monsters truly look like. And then they show us something worse. They show us that the monsters can be kind. They show us that the predators can choose to be protectors. They show us that strength without wisdom is nothing, and that the most powerful weapon in the universe is the ability to destroy and the choice not to. He finished his account and sent it to every library and archive in known space. Within a year, it had been translated into 300 languages. Every species read it. Every species learned the lesson. Earth was not to be challenged. Not because humans were strong, though they were. Not because they were brave, though they were. But because they were something the galaxy had never seen before. They were predators who had learned to be something more. On the rebuilt colony of New Haven, a memorial stood in the central square. 3 million names were carved into black stone. Beside, it was a garden. Planted by human and Dravani hands working together, children played among the flowers. Sergeant Nathan Cole visited the memorial on the anniversary of the attack. He stood before the stone and read the names silently. His face was hard, but his eyes were soft. A Dravani child approached him. She was young, barely old enough to walk alone. Her parents had been soldiers who died in the war. Now she lived in an orphanage that human aid workers had built. "Are you a warrior?" she asked. Cole looked down at her. For a moment, his face was unreadable. Then he smiled. A real smile. Warm and gentle. "I was," he said. "But right now, I'm just a man. Would you like to learn a game?" He taught her to play catch. She was terrible at it. She laughed anyway. Kethral watched from a distance, recording everything. When he finished, he closed his journal and wrote one final line in the margin. "Heaven help anyone foolish enough to threaten what they love." He looked up at the sky, where human ships patrolled the stars, and knew that he had witnessed the birth of something new. A species that could conquer the galaxy, but chose to heal it instead. A species that had looked into the darkness and become something brighter. The humans called themselves Earth's children. The galaxy called them something else. They called them hope,